Hi everybody.
Hi.
Let me tell you, my story is the story of the 6 million innocent Jewish people who were murdered by the Nazis during the Second World War. This is my story. Let me show you a little bit actually what has happened. This is Europe under occupation. In every country, so many people were murdered because the Nazis didn't like them. They didn't like Jews, they didn't like gypsies, they didn't like black people, they didn't like anybody who was not pure German, blonde and blue-eyed. They disliked them. That was Hitler disliked these people, and they had a lot of problems under Nazi occupation in Germany. Well, let me tell you a little bit background about myself. I was born in Vienna, in Austria. I was born in Austria on the 17th of April 1921. So if you're good at arithmetic, you can figure out that I'm 92 years young. You know, I don't consider myself old. I'm a young man of 92. Well, look, this is my family in Vienna. You know, my father and my mother underneath the grandfather's clock. My cousin here, Miss Schiff, who was living right next door to us. She was very much part of our family. And we were 3 boys, 3 children. In Vienna, music was so important for us. And every one of us had to learn an instrument. As soon as we reached the age of 6, the parents made sure that each one of us, we learned an instrument. This is my oldest brother, Otto, actually. He was 8 years older than I am. Otto had to learn the piano. Eric, who was 2 years older than I, he had to play the violin. And I, because I was the youngest at that time in 1938, actually, when this picture was taken, I was 17 years old, actually. I had to learn at the age of 6 the cello. I still play the cello nowadays, always. Well, this was my family. Yeah, we were playing together at home, and we were playing at the charity function here. The trio of the brother Knollers, we were playing Joseph Haydn trio number 1 in G. Let me tell you, remind you a little bit what actually happened. You know, Hitler became Vice Chancellor of Germany in 1933. But Austria was a different country. We were not part of Germany. But then on the 11th of March, 1938, Hitler entered Austria, occupied Austria, and this is the whole harassment started. Here you will see that my father had to complete this paper from the Nazis on April 1938. This here, it was the declaration of the assets of Jews. Every Jew had to declare how much money they owned and how much money they earned and how much money they had in a bank account. That's what my father did it immediately, complete this year. And not only that, but harassment against the Jews started immediately. In Vienna, they have taken Jews to clean the pavement of the street with soap and water. And look at the faces of the population, how they enjoyed themselves. They were very happy to make the Jews work. This was taken in 1938 after the Nazis occupied Austria. And also, every shop which was owned by a Jew was very clearly marked. They put on U, the J-U-D, and there's an E in the end. That's what the Nazis put down, that this particular shop is owned by a Jew. They were putting themselves in front of the Jewish-owned shops, and they put on big signs there. Germans, defend yourself, do not buy from Jews. This is got the population to stop them from going into the Jews and to buy into these shops and to buy things from them. And as this happened, they also had exhibitions, anti-Semitic exhibitions right away, whereas a caricature of a Jew is shown. The exhibition is called Der ewige Jude, or the Eternal Jew. And that was at the Northwest Railway Station in Vienna on the 2nd of August 1938. This is what happened right after the Germans occupied Germany. And but it was, I must say, it was still livable, because, but then in November 1938 a new law came on. The new law was that any Jew who was not of German nationality, because so many Jews came from Poland and from Hungary into Germany to better themselves, and these people who did not become German citizens, they were forcefully taken from their home and taken to the border of the country where they came from, either Poland or Hungary. And there was one family by the name of Greenspan. They lived for 35 years in Hanover, in Germany. And the husband, wife, and daughter was forcefully taken from their home, and they were only allowed to have 10 Reichsmark in their pocket. They lost everything but their bank account which they had. They lost their job, they lost their home, and they were taken to Poland. And in Poland, finally, they arrived in Poland. They phoned up their son, Herschel Greenspan, who was actually studying in medicine in the Paris University in Paris in France, studying medicine. And they phoned him up and said, look here what happened to us. We are here in Poland. We were forced to come back to Poland, and we lost everything. We have no home, we have no money, we have nothing. That boy, Herschel Greenspan, who was so upset what happened to his parents, that he actually went to a gunsmith. He got himself a gun, and with that gun he went to the German embassy, and he killed a German diplomat by the name of von Rath, just in retaliation of the sufferings of his parents. There you will see Herschel Greenspan was arrested on the 7th of November 1938 by the French, because he killed that German diplomat, and this was the diplomat that he killed, Ernst von Rath, and this was happened. There was an uproar in the whole of Germany and Austria. How come a Jew can go and kill a German diplomat? It was something unheard of. Immediately, the people went into these Jewish-owned shops, you know, smashed in the windows of these Jewish-owned shops, and went into the shop, and they plundered, took whatever they wanted. The population was so upset about this murder of the German diplomat. They went into this Jewish, which was very clearly marked as a Jewish-owned shop. They went in there and plundered, took whatever they wanted. And there you see another shop which was broken in. And all these glass, actually, which the people broke, was like crystals. And this is what they called nowadays, in November 1938, the Kristallnacht, the crystal night. That's what happened in Vienna and in Germany, all over the place. I must say, it was really something. The Nazis went to synagogues, to the prayer houses, and they burned down every synagogue. In Vienna we had 49 synagogues, and this was one of the synagogues where my parents were praying, actually. And this beautiful building doesn't exist anymore. It was burned down by the Nazis. It's a terrible thing. And you know, right away, we were actually living in Vienna in an apartment on the 3rd floor, in a building, apartment building on the 3rd floor. And in November, suddenly we heard a noise in the courtyard, and we saw Nazis in brown uniform coming into the building, went into their building, and naturally my parents were afraid maybe they're going to come up to our place on the 3rd floor. But no, they only went on the first floor because there was a very well-known Jewish family by the name of Epstein, who was very well known in Vienna. And they arrested the whole Jewish family on the Epstein, and Mr. Epstein jumped out of the window to escape, but it was, he killed himself actually, jumping into the courtyard from the first floor. And it was terrible. They took the whole family away and the body of that Mr. Epstein, and this happened right away. I must tell you something, it was terrible. We were all afraid they would come up to us on the third floor, but fortunately they didn't. I must tell you, my father was so upset really what happened there. My father called us all together and he said, look, you cannot possibly, it was not only this year, but we also were afraid to go into the street and to be recognized as Jews, because then immediately there would be, the Jews were arrested and taken to concentration camps. So my father called us together and said, look here, you boys, you young people, you cannot live in a country where these things are happening. You somehow you have to disappear, you have to leave the country. Immediately our cousin, Miss Schiff there that I showed you, she took the telephone and she phoned up another cousin in Florida and begged them, will you kindly please send some papers, visas, or for one of the Knoller boys, because the Knoller boys have to go and leave the country. The first one to leave was my brother Eric, who was 2 years older than I. He was the one who played the violin actually. And Eric was the first one to leave in December 1938. My oldest brother Otto, who was 25 in 1938, he was a medical student at the university. He was going with another university student to the Dutch border, Holland, and went illegally into Holland, went to Rotterdam, and there he was able to get himself a boat to take him to England. And I, at 17, I was the youngest boy. And my father says, look here, we have some friends in Antwerp, in Belgium. And he took the telephone, phoned up the friends in Belgium and begged them, could we possibly send Freddie over to you, because the Knoller boys have to leave the country. Immediately, naturally, they said, by all means, send him over, we take care of him, don't worry about it, we are friends of my parents. And so this is, but I was afraid, how can I possibly go away, you know, from my, I didn't know the language in Belgium, I didn't know anything, and I knew a little bit of French, but also somehow or other, my father said, you will go and we will, don't worry. I begged them, why don't we all go to Belgium? Mom and you, father and mother, together with me, let's all go to Belgium. He said, no, nothing will happen to us. We are old people. My father at that time was 57 years old, my mother was 53. I wish they would have come with me, because the Nazis killed them in Auschwitz later on, unfortunately. But this was the situation. And I must tell you something, in a way I was afraid to go, because we were so controlled by our father, you know. My father made sure that whatever we did, if we did something wrong, well, we got some smacks. But you know, it's different to today. You kids, you don't get smacks at home. I'm sure you don't. But we, in our time, we got plenty of smacks if we did something wrong. And I remember doing things wrong. I remember I was reading naughty books at night time. My father shouldn't see what I'm reading. I went to the toilet at night time and I read these naughty books telling me all about boys and girls and all that. And you know, I must say, and I read about France, and what happens in France, in the naughty district of Paris, and about the Moulin Rouge with the half-naked dancers. So you know, this is how I try to educate myself. But, and if my father would have seen what I'm reading, boy, would I have gotten smacks. You know, he would have taken away the book, but fortunately he didn't see what I was doing. But that was the situation at that time. So my father said, look here, I'll take you to the Belgian border, and there he hired, at night time, he hired a guide to take me into Belgium, into Antwerp. And I must say, I was very worried. How can I possibly go into this country? I spoke a little bit of French, but not good enough. But in Belgium, they do speak a little bit of French, but also Dutch, also Flamand, Flemish. Anyhow, this was the situation. I arrived in Antwerp. The friends of my family took care of me. They did a very nice job, fed me. And you know, if you remember, it didn't take very long when in March, so many refugees actually came from Germany and Austria to Belgium, that the Belgian government created refugee camps. I was put in a refugee camp together with people my own age, young people, and they had an orchestra there. My father sent me my cello, and I was playing in that orchestra. Everything was fine in that camp. And you know, it didn't take until in March 1940, the Germans again invaded Belgium and Holland. Belgium and Holland was occupied. Here was again under the Nazis. Some people from our refugee camp went up to Ostend to try to find a boat to take them to China, to take them to England, sorry, to take them to England. And but I learned a little bit of French in Belgium. I wanted to go to France. I wanted to go to the naughty district of Paris. I wanted to see the half-naked dancers in the Moulin Rouge. I wanted to go to France. So I went to the, why doesn't it work? Yeah, it was okay. Wait a minute. Yeah, it's it. Oops. Yeah, it's it. I was in Belgium here, and I went to the French border here, near Lille. And the France was not occupied from only Belgium and Holland. So the French gendarmes and the border guards were all afraid that the Germans would come in, so they asked us for the papers. And the only papers that I had was a German passport. This is actually a passport of my brother Eric, Otto here, Acton Knoller. But I had a similar passport, but I lost my passport. I couldn't show it to you. Anyhow, they saw the swastika and they saw the Deutsches Reich, and they didn't care because the Germans put a big red J on the front of the page of the passport to show that the owner of the passport is a Jew. So I went to the French gendarme and said, in French, moi je suis juif et je veux rentrer en France. I'm a Jew, I want to go into France. Didn't want to stay in Germany. But as soon as I said it, they arrested me as an enemy alien. And there they were taking me from, this doesn't work, never mind. They are taking me from Lille. From Lille, they take me all the way down to the Spanish border into a concentration camp of the enemies of France, Saint-Cyprien. And Saint-Cyprien was about 7,000 people were incarcerated there by the French. As there were real Nazis there, real Germans, and many, many Jews were there from Germany and Austria also. And as you know, it didn't take very long when the owner of the government, which was the Vichy government, Marshal Pétain, he was in charge of the government there, and the Germans occupied the northern part of France with Paris as its capital, and Marshal Pétain and Vichy government was in the unoccupied zone with Vichy as its capital, and the Germans told Marshal Pétain that he has to release all the real Nazis, the real Germans, but the Jews have to remain in the camp in Saint-Cyprien. Well, I must tell you something. Saint-Cyprien was a terrible camp. Very little food available for us, no washing facilities. It was a terrible. Soon cholera broke out and typhus broke out, and people started to die in the camp. And when two of my friends who were with me also contacted cholera, I said to myself, I gotta escape from here. I don't want to stay in the camp. I want to live. And really, I went to the barbed wire of the camp. We were guarded by Senegalese soldiers from Senegal. And I went to the barbed wire, dug myself underneath the barbed wire, and I escaped from Saint-Cyprien, and I made my way to a place called Gaillac. Gaillac, why Gaillac? Because my first cousins lived in Gaillac, and I wanted to be with my cousins. So I escaped from Saint-Cyprien, went to Gaillac. Gaillac was a beautiful farming community, a big farming, loads of farms, and it was harvest time, and the farmers needed help to take their harvest in, and really we worked very hard with the farmers, and they paid us very well. But all the time I said to myself, I'm here in France, but I want to see the Moulin Rouge, I want to see the naughty district of Paris, Montmartre, with all the places, the cabarets and nightclubs. This is where I wanted to go. So somehow or other, my cousin said, you are mad. You are here in unoccupied zone, unoccupied France, but if you go to Paris, they are occupied, all the Nazis are there. But I wanted to do something, and I did it. Well, I went to Paris, I got myself some false identification papers. I became a Frenchman from Alsace-Lorraine. If you remember, Alsace is actually a former German province, and the people from Alsace have a German accent when they spoke French. And as I had a German accent also when I spoke French, I made myself out to be a Frenchman with a different name. I changed my name to Robert Metzner, born in Metz, which was in Alsace. And with these false papers, I went from Gaillac through the demarcation line. I arrived in Paris. I arrived in Gare du Nord, the railway station in Paris, and they are full of German soldiers, the army, navy, air force, whatever uniforms you wanted, they were there. And, and I saw the big metro that was the underground, French underground in Paris, and there's a big map there of Paris, and I saw on the map Montmartre. This is where I read in these naughty books about the naughty district of Paris, Montmartre. This is where I want to go. I took the underground, and I arrived at Place Pigalle, which was the center of Montmartre. And I saw again loads of German soldiers in the district, and I saw a Mediterranean-looking fellow talking to a group of German soldiers in German. And I listened what he was saying. And he said, you come with me, I will show you a beautiful place. You will have lots of fun, lots of girls there for you. You will have be entertained. You come with me. And he took the group of German soldiers down Rue Pigalle into a nightclub, a cabaret, a nightclub, which was called Paradise. And when he came back, I tackled him. I said, look here, I also speak German, because I'm Robert Metzner from Metz, and I'm from Alsace, and I must tell you, between you and me, I'm broke. I have no more money left. Can you help? Make a long story short, this boy who was a Greek fellow from Greece, and he and we became very good friends, and he introduced me to the owners of the nightclub and of the cabarets in Montmartre, and wherever we took these soldiers into these naughty places, we received a percentage of the money which they spent in these places. I must tell you, we earned a lot of money. It was quite fantastic, actually, when we took the Germans into these nightclubs and cabarets. And it was really wonderful. And we did so well, it was really fantastic. I became very friendly with that boy. Christos was his name. And it was great fun. But, you know, this is how it is. But then something happened, actually, in 1942. In 1942, a new law came on in France, whereas oh, I forgot to show you. This is actually Moulin Rouge in Paris. This is the Moulin Rouge, the cabaret with the half-naked dancers on the stage, you know. And that was under German occupation here. There you will see there's Champs-Élysées under occupation with the Germans occupying Champs-Élysées. It's there. And in 1942 a new law came on, whereas the Jews had to wear, when they walked in the street, had to wear a yellow star. There in France it was Juif on it. Oops, sorry, Juif on it. And in Germany they had the new law. The Germans asked German Jews with Jude on it. In Holland they had JWD. In every country, wherever the Nazis were in Europe, they had the yellow star. The Jews had to wear a yellow star. And you know, sometimes when they took German soldiers into these nightclubs and cabarets, you know, I saw Jews coming towards me. I really felt like a traitor. Here I am earning money from my enemies, but these Jews have to wear their yellow star because I had these false papers with me. One day I was standing at Pigalle, suddenly I saw two civilians coming towards me. Long black leather coats with a hat on, and they come towards me and they ask me in French, qu'est-ce que vous faites de parler avec les soldats allemands? Qu'est-ce que vous faites ici? What are you doing here to talk to German soldiers? So I answered them in German, oh, but I'm a guide. I show the Germans who maybe come from the Russian front, I show them the beautiful sights of Paris. Immediately they took me in their car, took me to Gestapo headquarters, and they started interrogating me. Said, how come you speak such a pure German, not like a Frenchman? Such a pure German you have. I said, I showed them my papers. Here you see I'm from Alsace-Lorraine. In fact, at home with my parents we only speak German. My mother can't even speak French. And we all come formerly from Germany, really. He said, look, you speak perfect German and you speak perfect French. Instead of working there on Place Pigalle with these soldiers, you should come and we need interpreters. We really need interpreters, somebody who speaks German and French, because we can't understand French and we need, you must come and work for us. And while he was talking actually on his desk, I saw on his desk a plaster head of a human being in plaster. And he saw me looking at it. Oh, he said, oh, this plaster head is a plaster head of a Jew, because we were taught how to recognize Jews by the structure of the head. And with that, he got up from his desk and he went behind me and he started tracing with his two hands my head. I must say, just a second. I must say, I'm not afraid to say I wet my pants, because I was so sure that I'm going to be now recognized as a Jew. And he said, and he traced my head and he said, yes, I can see you come from good German background. The guy who was taught how to recognize Jews by the structure of the head now tells me I come from good German background. He said, I want you to come next Monday. I want to introduce you to my officers because you should be working for us and you will be earning a lot of money if you work for us. I said, yeah, okay, thank you very much. He said, come Monday, I will come Monday and meet your officers. I went back to my friend Christos on Place Pigalle in Montmartre, and I said, look here, Christos, I cannot work here anymore, because if I don't do what the Germans tell me, if they see me again working here, they will deport me and will take me to concentration camp. He said, leave it with me. And really 2 days afterwards, Christos, my friend Christos, introduced me to a leader of the French resistance, a Monsieur Albert. Monsieur Albert was a leader of the French resistance, and he interviewed me, and we've decided that I'm going to join I'm going to fight my enemies. I'm going to in the resistance, French resistance. And you know, I must say, this is actually my resistance group here. This is the resistance group, Groupe Bessières. I want to show you where it is actually. Huh?
I don't think it's working, so do you want it to go back?
Can I go back? No?
Yeah, back.
Ah, here. He took me back from Paris, he took me down. In 1943 it was. 1943, it's already, the whole of France was occupied by the Nazis, by Germany. And he took me from Paris down, took me to a place called Figeac. Figeac was a place surrounded by high mountains, high snowy mountains, and in the mountains the French resistance group were hiding from the Nazis there. And there, in the Groupe Bessières, we learned how to shoot, we learned how to put explosives together, and we learned how to make sabotage in town against the Nazis. Once we even derailed the German troop train. I must tell you, I was so happy to be finally fighting my enemies rather than making believe that I take them to nightclubs and cabarets. And this was, for me, it was so important for me to finally fight my enemies. It was wonderful. Well, let me just go, sorry. This was my group, Groupe Bessières. This group was wonderful. In 1943, I was 22 years old. What do you expect? I met a beautiful girl, a French girl. Jacqueline was her name. I really fell in love with her. She was gorgeous, really gorgeous girl. But it wasn't all so beautiful because Jacqueline was quite moody, you know. And sometimes we fought, we had arguments. And you know, one day when I couldn't stand it anymore, I said, Jacqueline, enough's enough. You go your way, I go my own way. She didn't like that at all. She went and smacked my face and she ran away. Well, I went back to my resistance group. But after 2 days, actually, I said to myself, maybe I should go and see her again, because we always met in a bistro in the town of Figeac, always the same bistro. And so I went, actually, maybe I should apologize to her or something. Anyhow, I went to the bistro, but she wasn't there. But 2 gendarmes, French gendarmes, were waiting for me. And as I came into the bistro, their French gendarmes arrested me, and they have taken me to their office, and they're interrogated. They wanted to know all about my resistance group, and I found out that Jacqueline actually has given away that I was working in the resistance. They wanted to know the name of the resistance group, the location where we are, and all the names. And naturally, I would not talk. I would not, just wouldn't say anything. So they went and smashed in my face to make me talk. Blood all over me. And you know, but I still didn't want to talk. So when they saw that I wouldn't talk about anything, they took up lit up cigarettes and put the lit up cigarettes on my body, burning my body to make me talk. They tortured me. And I must tell you, when I couldn't stand it, I said, stop! I will tell you the truth. I will tell you the truth. The truth is, I have nothing to do with any resistance group, but the truth is that I am not Robert Metzner from Alsace, but I'm really, my name is Freddie Knoller. I have false papers. I'm really Freddie Knoller. I come from Vienna. I'm a Jew from Vienna. I'm hiding up there in the hills from the Nazis. They were flabbergasted. Very rarely did any Jew admit to being a Jew, because that would have been the end. And in fact, it was the end of me. The French brought me to the Gestapo, the German secret police. The Gestapo put me in jail for 3 days, and they found out that really what I was saying was really true. I was Freddie Knoller, a Jew from Vienna. Immediately, the Germans took me back. Come on, go back. They took me back from Figeac, put me back to Paris, and outside Paris there's a place called Drancy. Drancy is a concentration camp where 25,000 Jews are incarcerated, awaiting deportation to the east. I have a picture here of Drancy. I'll show you. This is Drancy concentration camp, where we were men, women, children, all together squeezed in, 25,000 people, squeezed in, that we were living in these abandoned apartment houses. We were just sleeping in there together. It was really a terrible thing. Really, was really a terrible place. And every transport, from time to time, the names came up for transportation to the east, and they didn't tell us where in the east we were going. And on the 6th of October 1943, my name came up for deportation. And I and 1,000 people from the concentration, from here, from Drancy, every transport was 1,000 people. We were squeezed into these cattle wagons, and it was impossible. Men, women, children, all together squeezed in, and we had 100 people in each cattle wagon. It was impossible to be comfortable. We were just like piles in there. Impossible. But we had a good a friend of mine with whom I became friendly. He was a good organizer, and he shouted, "Look, let's organize ourselves," and he gave the old women and the women and the old people and the children, the babies, a seat to lean against the wall on this wagon. And he said, "We young people, half of us will stand and half of us will sit on the floor, and every 4 hours, day and night, we will change. Those who are sitting will stand up, and those who are standing will sit down again for the next 4 hours." And this is how we survived a terrible, terrible journey. I must tell you, I will never forget the atmosphere in the train. The shouting, the crying of the babies, the crying of the children, the mothers shouting at the children, and the atmosphere was terrible. We had one aluminium bucket where the people had to empty themselves, a sanitary bucket. They had to empty themselves in that sanitary bucket. But there was no curtain around. So can you imagine, men or women had to do it in public, in front of everybody. It was awful. It was terrible, so demeaning. Suddenly a woman shouts, "My baby doesn't breathe. My baby is dead." And this young man with whom I became friends, who was organizing the wagon, his name was Dr. Robert Weiss, he was a doctor. He went to the baby, and really the baby was dead. Quite soon an old man collapsed. He was dead because we did not receive any food whatsoever, no food or no drink in the train journey. None whatsoever. We were all so hungry and so thirsty. It was something I will never ever forget, the atmosphere. It was something really terrible. And it was, the train journey took us a long way. 3 days and 3 nights without any food or with any drink. By the time we arrived at our destination, not for me. Okay. By the time we arrived at our destination, after 3 days and 3 nights without any food or drinks whatsoever, the door was opened up and we saw SS in uniform, the German soldiers in uniform, SS, and a loudspeaker came on. The loudspeaker says, "You are here in Auschwitz concentration camp and you will be working for the victory of the German Reich." And they asked the young men to line up in front of the wagon. So I went out of the wagon together with my friend Dr. Robert Weiss. Together we marched to the camp. It was about 10 minutes or 15 minutes march. Then we were guarded by German soldiers with guns. And we came to the camp, and there was the entrance, a big sign there, Arbeit macht frei, work gives you freedom. We went through the camp. The orchestra with old prisoners within their striped uniform were playing there, and there we went taken to a barrack. We had to undress. They gave us our uniform of striped pajamas, you know, very thin striped pajamas, and we had to leave our clothes away. And there we couldn't take anything with us. I must say, suddenly we went then taken to the next block, and there all prisoners came with shears, and they cut all our hair off from our head. All our hair were completely bald, no hair on our hair. And then we were taken again to another block where the Germans were registering us the name that we had to give them the name of our parents, our brothers, of any family, and with the addresses. And each one of us was given a number, and they tattooed the number on our arm here. My number was 157108. That was my number. I still have the tattoo here on my arm here. And I will never take it out. I always want to keep it as a souvenir. Finally, we were taken to a last barrack where they were allocating us, where we slept. And we were finally given, after 3 days and 3 nights, a bowl of hot soup. And we were allowed to go and lie down in the bunks, 2 people in each bunk, and to sleep. In the next morning, we had to line up in front of the barrack, and they told us, "You're going to work for the victory of the German Reich, and you're going to work in a factory, a German chemical factory, which was not far from the camp. IG Farben Industry was the name." My first job that I had working, I had to carry 25 kilos cement bags on my shoulder, and we had to take these cement bags into a building from a railways wagon, and there in the building we had to empty it. But we were not allowed just to walk with it, but we had to run with it. 25 kilos is very, very heavy. And I saw so many old people collapse, they couldn't do it. They were older people than me. I was fortunate, I was strong and I was young, and I was able to do it, but so many people couldn't do it. They collapsed. Right away the Germans took them away, we never saw them again. And when it happened, we were just allowed to run with these cement bags. It was a terrible job. I knew we are not going to survive it for very long because of that little food that we got in Auschwitz. Let me tell you what food we got. In the morning, when we got up in the morning, they gave us a black coffee with a slice of bread with a margarine on it. Then we went to work. At 12:30 we stopped work, and she gave us a bowl of hot soup very liquid, hardly any vegetables in it. And at 12:30 we stopped work for half an hour and we received a bowl of hot soup. Then in the evening at 6:30, 7 o'clock, after running with these cement bags on our shoulder, they gave us another soup when we arrived at the place in the barrack where we slept. So that's all we had day in, day out. It was terrible because I remember the hunger that we felt. We were only thinking of food. How could we possibly survive doing that hard work? And I knew I couldn't survive it for very long because although I was strong and young, but still it was impossible with so little food to run with these cement bags. One day I saw my friend Dr. Robert Weiss in the camp and said, "Oh, how are you?" So I told him what I was, how hard I was working. I said, "Look here, you see me here, but in 2 weeks' time I'll be dead." He said, "Look, because I'm a doctor, they put me in charge of that hospital. Why don't you come to the hospital of Auschwitz and I will be able to, hopefully, I will try to find extra food for you because in order to survive you gotta eat more because what they give you is not enough. You will die soon." And really every night I went to that hospital and Robert Weiss sometimes gave me a bowl of soup. Sometimes he gave me a piece of bread, extra bread. And you know, once, I will never forget, he got me a piece of salami. Wow, a salami in Auschwitz is unbelievable. And I'm so sure I'm talking to you today because of that extra food that Dr. Robert Weiss gave me. He was my friend and he was my savior. I'm sure I'm alive today because of what he did for me. In fact, not only did he give me extra food, but he had contacts with the administration. He got me out of the cement commando, that hard work with the cement bags, and he got me in an easy commando. I had to sweep the floor, in an empty factory, you know, which was marvelous to be just sweeping the floor. That was wonderful. It's just fantastic. Anyhow, this was my life in Auschwitz. I mean, it was terrible. Anyhow, this was it. But quite soon, actually, in 1943, 1944, we heard about the Allied troops landing in Normandy. We heard the Russians are pushing back the Germans from Stalingrad. We heard about the British troops are pushing back the Germans from Tobruk, from North Africa. I must tell you, it was so wonderful to hear these rumors, how the situation in the world is changing. The Germans are really being defeated, finally. And it gave us so much hope to survive. It was wonderful. Came already 1944, end of 1944. Suddenly in December 1944, we heard artillery coming from the east. The Russians are pushing back the Germans towards Poland. And in January 1945, the whole of Auschwitz was evacuated, and we had to walk from Auschwitz to another town called Gleiwitz, which was about 25 kilometers away, in ice and snow, because in winter, you know, in Poland is minus 15 to 20 degrees temperature, and we are there in our thin clothes, thin pajamas, and it was so many people just died on that march. They called it the death march, actually, because as soon as somebody sit down to relax, couldn't march anymore, the Germans shot them. And some people escaped into the woods, tried to escape into the woods, the Germans shot them. It was a most terrible journey. Only half of us actually survived on that march when we arrived to Gleiwitz. Well, when we arrived in Gleiwitz, they took us to an abandoned brick factory, and we were allowed to sleep on the ground, no blanket, no mattress, just on the ground in the abandoned brick factory. We slept there. In the morning, they shouted, "Raus, aufstehen, you have to get up." And I got up, but the guy next to me didn't get up. So I pushed him, "Come on, you gotta get up." I saw he was dead. There was a middle-aged prisoner, and there he had whereas we had on our uniform a yellow star, a Jewish star actually, he had a red triangle with an F on it. Red triangle with an F indicated that he was a political prisoner. He was probably a communist, and that letter F indicated he was from France. And he was a middle-aged political, probably communist from France. And when I saw he was dead, actually, I tore off his red triangle, put it in my pocket. In the next camp, I exchanged my Jewish star for that red triangle. I became a political prisoner because Jews always had the worst work to be done, but the political prisoners and also the gypsies with a black triangle, or the gay people, homosexuals with a pink triangle, they got a much better job than the Jews. It was the most. So I exchanged my Jewish star against in the next camp. In the next camp, actually, I went to the. This was actually me in uniform. But I want to tell you that this picture was taken about 3 weeks after liberation in France. But I will tell you the story exactly. This is exactly, but I already had 3 weeks of food in me. But anyhow, I will come back on that story later on. This was my next camp, which was Nordhausen, where they produced the V1 and V2 rockets, which your grandparents know so well here in London, where the rockets were exploding in England. And you know, there we were working around the table, putting machineries together, which the Germans told us what to do. And we were in charge of our group. There was a Polish political prisoner who was in charge of us, and he said, "Look here, we know it's the end of the war. Why don't we make a bit of sabotage? Let's put some sand from the ground, put it in the machineries, and maybe the rockets are not going to explode." And that's what we did. But the Germans found, 2 weeks later, actually sand in that rocket. They took at random 50 Jews, lined them up against the wall, put ropes around their neck, and they had slow-moving electronic machines. They lifted them up very slowly. They were strangling them, you know, and they took them 15 to 20 minutes to die. And they forced us to look at them, how they died. It was something I will never ever forget, how to see them, how they died, just in retaliation because of the sand that we put into these machineries. It was a terrible situation. And quite soon, the Americans approached Dora. We were taken to the last camp, which was Bergen-Belsen. Bergen-Belsen was the worst camp ever, because as we arrived on the 1st of March 1945, no food was given to us, no food whatsoever, absolutely nothing to eat. There was, in the camp, there was one tap of water, and we queued up for hours to get a little bit of water to drink. But no food was given to us. I remember I went digging into the ground, trying to find roots, anything that to feed myself with. And I saw some people, young people, you know, the older people, you know, while they were walking, they just collapsed of hunger and they died. The ground of Bergen-Belsen was full of dead people. Ground was full of dead people. I saw with my own eyes some young people finding sharp stones, and they went with the sharp stones to the dead bodies there, and they cut up the flesh from this dead body and roasted it over fire. It was a terrible. Cannibalism was ripe in Bergen-Belsen. On the 15th of April, 2 days before my 17th of April birthday, the British Army entered Bergen-Belsen Bergen-Belsen was liberated, and it was wonderful. We were free. It was so wonderful. Finally, we were free. We were liberated by the British Army. Immediately, they saw how many people were dead there. They got the German guards to force them to dig big graves in the ground, and in the mass graves, they were put in the mass graves by the German guards. And we wanted to go and kill the guards, but the British Army wouldn't let us. But you know, this was something. They took them away then, and they gave us food. The British Army, the first food, I will never forget what we got. We got some hot milk and rice. And with this hot milk and rice, they mixed it with the hot milk, and they told us, look, you haven't eaten for so many years, for so many months now, nothing to eat. You don't stuff it in yourself because you will die. And I took it easy, and I survived, but so many people stuffed it in themselves and they died after liberation. And, you know, I remembered, and if you remember my brother Eric, the middle brother, who actually went to Florida from Vienna, I remembered that he went to Florida. So I said to myself, I'm in Paris now, I'm going to go to the American embassy and beg them, perhaps they can find my brother Eric. I went to the embassy in civilian clothes, not in the uniform, because the French gave us civilian clothes, but I kept my uniform anyhow. So I begged them, can you find my brother? I said, look, we will find your brother. And I told them, the people who send him the visa to go to America. And but you will always have to tell us where you are, because if you change your address. I said, yes, I promised I'd do that. So I went back to the hotel. A doctor looked at me, and I was only bones, no flesh on my body, only bones. And you know, they said, look, we better take care of you because we don't want you to die. And they took me sent me to another doctor, which was outside Paris, in a little village. Salonay-sur-Guye was the name. And there, Dr. Bentin was his name. He was actually the one who said to me, do me a favor, put on your uniform, because I want to, I want to take a picture of you as a souvenir. And this is when 3 weeks after the liberation, he took this picture of uniform, and this is how I got rolled on this picture. Suddenly, we saw an American jeep coming into that village, little village, and would you believe, out of that village, out of that jeep, my brother Eric, the middle brother, was 2 years older than I. He has joined the American army, and he was in Europe with the army in France, and the embassy found where he is, and they gave him my address, and we had a reunion there with my brother Eric. We cried on each other's shoulder, and he told me that my other brother Otto, who actually went direct to England via Holland, he also was in America. So I said, look, you have 2 brothers in America now, you will come, we will send papers for you, you will have to go to America. I said, I would love to go to America, naturally. In 1947, I received papers to go to America. My brothers were waiting for me. I didn't know any English, actually. I had to go to evening classes to learn English. And when I learned enough English, I got myself a job in Baltimore, Maryland, which was a town between New York and Washington, in Baltimore. I got a very good job selling clothes to the public. It was wonderful. Earned a lot of money, actually. It was wonderful. Well, I must tell you something. One day, some friends of mine said, hey, we know there's a British girl from Britain who is here on holiday. Would you like to meet her? I said, you know, I like girls, and naturally I would love to meet her. So they gave me the phone number, and I phoned her up in the evening, and I must tell you, we spoke for over an hour over the telephone. And I fell in love with her over the telephone because she had a pure English accent, you know. She came from London, a pure, not like the American slang, you know. But so we made a date on a blind date. We made a blind date. We met in the evening at a place where we both met, a blind date. And I must tell you, it's a gorgeous girl. It was wonderful. I really was in love with her. We met in October 1950. We got engaged in November 1950. I was so in love with her. And then on the 31st of December 1950, we got married. Yeah, we Yanks are very fast, you know. Anyhow, can you imagine such a tremendous thing? And you know, we lived there together for 2 years, and then she became homesick. She wanted to go back to her parents. And naturally, wherever my wife wants to go, I go with her naturally. And we went in 1952, we came to London, and we were received by her parents, and we were taking care of her parents. It was wonderful to be with a family. It was fantastic. But, but you know, I don't know whether you know, but in England, you know, if you are married for 60 years, then you receive a congratulation card from the Queen. Did you know that? Here, look at that. This was my congratulation card that I got from Her Royal Highness, Her Majesty the Queen, Elizabeth R. Said, I'm so pleased to know that you are celebrating your diamond wedding anniversary on the 31st of December 2010. I send my congratulations to you on such a special occasion, and would like to add my good wishes for a very happy Christmas to Mr. and Mrs. Fred Knoller. This is, I must tell you, I cherish this document so much. And cheeky as I am, I sent a letter to her, to Buckingham Palace. And I said, Your Majesty, I want to thank you for the beautiful congratulation card, and I hope you do not mind. I send you a copy of my book, Living with the Enemy. This is my book, Living with the Enemy, my life story. I hope you will be able to read it. Would you believe I got a letter back? From a lady in waiting who said, Dear Mr. Knoller, the Queen has asked me to write to you and to thank you for the book that she got and for your wonderful wishes, and she will read it and she wishes you all the very, very best wishes. Well, there are not many people who have correspondence with the Queen, do they? Anyhow, this is me, and I must tell you, this is my story. I must tell you, it is so difficult, actually, in such a short time, actually, to tell you all the details. So in the year 2000, actually, I had a friend who was writing books. John Landau was his name. And he, in the year 2000, he interviewed me, wanted to know all about my past, because for 35 years, I just didn't want to talk about it. 35 years after liberation, by the time I had 2 daughters, one daughter was 19 years old and the other was 21 years old. And my daughter said to me, come on, Dad, tell us about what you went through in Auschwitz concentration camp, because we know from your number you were there. I said, look, I want to forget about it. He said, but what you're doing is not fair, because what will we ever tell our children about their grandfather if you don't talk about it? And somehow that made sense. And on that evening, on the Friday night evening, when we sat around the table after dinner, till 4 o'clock in the morning, I was telling to my 2 daughters and my wife everything, all the details of my experience. And the same thing to my friend, John Landau. He wrote a book he got me to talk into a tape recorder, my story, and he wrote it. Well, this book is now available in shops for £8. You can buy it here. If you have £8 in your pocket, come out here and I will put your name on it, put a dedication in your name with my best wishes and a signature. And if by any chance you haven't got any money, you know, I'm going to give Stacy, our wonderful teacher, your wonderful teacher, I'm going to give her my a special order form, and then if you give the money, then you send it to me. There's my address here, you know, and I'd be glad to send, you tell me the name of the people to whom I should dedicate a book and everything. So this is my story. I tell you something, maybe you have questions to ask me. Don't hesitate. I'm here to ask questions.